In the heart of the Middle East along the Mediterranean coastline lies Lebanon, a nation once celebrated as the Switzerland of the Middle East has become synonymous with economic hardship. Its capital, Beirut, was a vibrant hub of luxury, trade, and innovation. The cedar trees that beautified its mountains were not just national symbols, but emblems of a nation deeply rooted in history and prepared for greatness. Yet, those same cedars overlook a country struggling with financial collapse, political gridlock, and the despair of its people. The decline of this once thriving nation is not just a story of misfortune, but a cautionary tale of how mismanagement, corruption, and political instability can unravel even the most promising economic landscapes. Today, Lebanon's headlines are troubling. Its currency has lost more than 90% of its value, and basic public services have all but collapsed. Millions face unemployment, with many struggling to afford essentials. Less than 60 years ago, Lebanon's economy was the envy of the region. Its banks attracted vast international investment, its tourism thrived on a reputation for cultural richness, and its people enjoyed a cosmopolitan lifestyle powered by entrepreneurial spirit. To understand the depths of Lebanon's economic crisis, one must journey back to how this country was created, the civil war, and most importantly, its golden era, a time when its economy flourished, its people thrived, and its future seemed unshakably bright. So what went wrong? How did Lebanon transition from prosperity to an economic cautionary tale? This is the story of Lebanon's economic downfall, a nation that stood at the crossroads of wealth and destruction. To make it clearer, let's have a short and quick recap of how the country Lebanon came into existence. After World War I, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire led to the division of its territories. In 1920, the League of Nations granted France a mandate over Syria and Lebanon. Under French administration, Greater Lebanon was declared on September 1, 1920. This new entity expanded the historical Mount Lebanon area to include Beirut, Tripoli, Sidon, Tyre, and the Bekaa Valley, bringing together diverse religious communities: Sunni Muslims, Christians, Druze, and Shia Muslims. The French aimed to establish a state with a Christian majority, reflecting their ties to Lebanon's Maronite community. However, this diversity also laid the foundation for future sectarian challenges, which also laid the groundwork for Lebanon's confessional political system. Here, power was shared among religious groups. The struggle for independence gained momentum during World War II, resulting in Lebanon's sovereignty in 1943, with the National Pact ensuring a delicate sectarian balance in governance. Between 1943 and 1975, Lebanon experienced a period of significant economic prosperity and stability, often referred to as its Golden Era. Following its independence from France in 1943, they adopted a free market economy that encouraged private enterprise and attracted foreign investments. In fact, in the 1800s, Beirut grew to become the most important port in the region, replacing Akko, which is located further south. This change happened mainly because Mount Lebanon turned into a major center for producing silk, which was sold to Europe. The silk industry brought a lot of wealth to the region, but it also made the area heavily dependent on its connections with Europe. Most of the silk produced in Mount Lebanon was sent to Lyon and Marseille, a large port city in France. Because of this strong trade connection, the French started to play a big role in the region. They influenced the economy, culture, and daily life of the people living there. The silk trade not only made Beirut and Mount Lebanon rich, but also tied their future closely to European markets, especially France. From 1872 to 1910, silk production was considered the pillar of the Lebanese economy, accounting for more than 60% of all exports. In that period, a silk office was set up to manage the region's silk industry. The office was shut down in 1982 due to the collapse of the industry. But as Beirut's port became busier with ships carrying silk and other goods, the city grew in size and importance. People from nearby areas moved to Beirut for work, and the city started to develop into a center for trade and culture. This period marked the beginning of Beirut's transformation into a major city in the Middle East, connected to the rest of the world through its bustling port and trade with Europe. By 1893, there were 194 Lebanese-owned silk factories producing around 524,000 kilograms of raw silk per year. Beirut was nicknamed Paris of the Middle East, not only because it emerged as a central hub for international commerce and finance, but due to its rich culture, French-influenced architecture, cosmopolitan lifestyle, and a reputation for being a glamorous and vibrant hub for arts and entertainment. During the 1950s and 1960s, Lebanon's economy generally flourished, driven by sectors like banking, tourism, and trade. The country's banking secrecy laws and liberal financial regulations attracted investment from across the region, especially from oil-rich Arab nations seeking a stable environment for their investments. This influx of funds contributed to Lebanon becoming one of the world's fastest-growing economies during this period. The tourism industry also played a vital role in Lebanon's economic success. The nation's diverse culture, scenic landscapes, and vibrant nightlife drew visitors from around the globe. Landmarks such as the ancient city of Byblos and the ski resorts in the Lebanese mountains showcase the country's rich heritage and natural beauty, further boosting its appeal as a tourist destination. However, beneath this cover of prosperity, underlying social and political tensions began to surface. The Lebanese political system, based on a delicate confessional balance among various religious communities, struggled to adapt to demographic changes and growing demands for political representation. Economic disparities between different regions and communities also contributed to mounting dissatisfaction. In 1958, these tensions erupted into a brief civil conflict, leading to the intervention of U.S. Marines in Beirut. The crisis was resolved, and a new government was formed under President Fuad Chehab, who implemented various social and economic reforms aimed at addressing some of the systemic issues. Despite these efforts, the underlying fractures within Lebanese society persisted. The economic boom that had begun under President Camille Chamoun continued into the 1960s, fueled by the flight of investments from other unstable Arab countries into Lebanon. This period of growth was further promoted by maintaining good relations with neighboring countries, including the United Arab Republic. But in 1966, something interesting happened. The collapse of Intrabank, the country's largest financial institution, sent shockwaves through the economy. The bank's failure exposed vulnerabilities in Lebanon's financial sector and highlighted the risks associated with over-reliance on banking and services. Despite this setback, the economy managed to recover, but the incident predicted potential challenges ahead. By the early 1970s, Lebanon's economic growth began to slow down. The influx of Palestinian refugees and militants, particularly after the 1967 Arab-Israeli War and the 1970 Jordanian Civil War, added strain to the country's social tension. The presence of armed groups and the increasing frequency of cross-border conflicts with Israel further destabilized the region. These factors, combined with internal political disagreements and economic disparities, set the stage for the Lebanese Civil War, which would later cause the end of the Switzerland of the Middle East. This war marked the end of Lebanon's golden era, leading to years of conflict and a significant decline in economic stability and growth. After the creation of Israel in 1948, many Palestinians lost their homes and became refugees. This is what happened. A lot of them moved to Lebanon, and their numbers grew after wars in the region. Some Palestinians, especially those in the Palestinian Liberation Organization (PLO), brought weapons and started fighting Israel from inside Lebanon. This scared some Lebanese groups, especially the Christians, who felt the Palestinians were a threat to their country. At the same time, Lebanon was surrounded by countries with their own problems, for example, Syria and Israel. These countries started interfering in Lebanon's issues. They supported different groups to gain influence, which made things worse. Syria first got involved in Lebanon in 1976, saying it was to keep the peace. But President Hafez al-Assad, the father of the last former dictator Bashar al-Assad, really wanted to keep Lebanon under his control. He wanted to stop Lebanon from splitting up and keep the Palestinian Liberation Organization (PLO) in check. Syria backed different groups, like Christian militias and later Muslim and leftist ones. This was to make sure no one group could rule Lebanon without Syria's approval. Israel, however, was worried about attacks from the PLO in southern Lebanon. In 1982, Israel launched Operation Peace for Galilee to push the PLO out. They also supported the South Lebanon Army, SLA, a Christian militia, to keep a safe area near their border. But Israel also didn't want Syria to have too much power in Lebanon. This made Lebanon a battleground for Syria and Israel's power struggles. By 1990, Syria was the top power in Lebanon, controlling the military and politics until 2005. Israel, meanwhile, stayed in southern Lebanon until 2000. This helped Hezbollah grow strong in the area. Lebanon, once peaceful, became part of a bigger regional fight. The Lebanese Civil War, spanning from 1975 to 1990, had profound and lasting effects on the nation's economy. This is the war in which more than 100,000 people died. It inflicted severe damage on the country's infrastructure, including roads, bridges, and essential utilities, leading to a significant decline in economic productivity. One of the most immediate economic consequences was the collapse of state revenues. The growth of sectarian partial states during the war resulted in a sharp decline in the government's ability to collect taxes and utility payments. Customs revenues, traditionally a major source of income, were also severely reduced as many private and illegal ports operated under the control of various militias. The financial sector, once a pillar of Lebanon's economy, suffered immensely. The Lebanese pound experienced significant devaluation, leading to hyperinflation and a loss of public confidence in the banking system. This monetary instability eroded savings and diminished the purchasing power of the Lebanese populace. Moreover, the war precipitated a substantial brain drain, as many skilled professionals and entrepreneurs emigrated in search of safety and stability. This exodus further weakened the economic foundation of the country, as the loss of human capital hindered post-war recovery efforts. Through the destruction of infrastructure, collapse of state revenues, destabilization of the financial sector, and the emigration of skilled professionals, the war devastated the nation's economy. These factors collectively transformed Lebanon from a once prosperous nation into one struggling with severe economic challenges. After the devastating 15-year civil war that ended in 1990, the country faced the huge task of rebuilding its shattered infrastructure and reviving its economy. This man, Rafik Hariri, came through as a messiah to restore Lebanon's glory. Rafik was a billionaire businessman who had made his fortune in Saudi Arabia. He played a key role to stop the long-term civil war and emerged as a central figure in this Reconstruction era. Rafik was appointed as a prime minister in 1992. He introduced an ambitious plan aimed at transforming Lebanon, particularly its capital Beirut, into a hub of commerce and tourism in the Middle East, just as it was back in the Golden Era. Central to Rafik's vision was the redevelopment of Beirut's Central District BCD, an area severely damaged during the war. To facilitate this, the Lebanese Company for the Development and Reconstruction of Beirut Central District, known as Solidaire, was established in 1994. Solidaire, a joint stock company, was tasked with overseeing the planning and reconstruction of the BCD. The company was granted special powers, including eminent domain and limited regulatory authority, effectively making it a public-private partnership. The reconstruction efforts focused on modernizing infrastructure, including roads, luxury real estate, and commercial spaces, with the goal of attracting foreign investors and reviving Beirut's pre-war status as the Paris of the Middle East. However, this approach faced criticism. Many original property owners in the BCD were compelled to relinquish their properties in exchange for Solidaire shares, a process some viewed as forced expropriation. The argument was that the compensation offered was below true market value, leading to allegations of loss of right among former residents. Financing the reconstruction posed significant challenges as the government resorted to extensive borrowing, issuing bonds denominated in US dollars to fund the ambitious projects. While this strategy facilitated rapid development, it also led to a substantial increase in public debt. By the early 2000s, Lebanon's debt-to-GDP ratio had escalated dramatically, raising concerns about fiscal sustainability. This caused public debt to grow quickly, with total debt increasing by 123% each year from 1993 to 1995 and reaching 171% by 2000. Fast forward to COVID period, Lebanon's debt had risen to 178% of its GDP, making it one of the most indebted countries in the world. Nearly 45% of government income was spent on paying off debt, leaving little money for important public services and infrastructure. Despite the physical transformation of Beirut, the broader economic benefits anticipated from the reconstruction efforts were uneven. The focus on the BCD led to comments that reconstruction efforts were overly centralized, neglecting other regions and sectors of the economy. Moreover, the heavy reliance on debt-financed projects without corresponding economic reforms contributed to long-term financial vulnerabilities. While Rafik Hariri's post-war reconstruction plan succeeded in physically revitalizing parts of Beirut, it also laid the groundwork for future economic challenges. The combination of centralized development, forced property takeovers, and escalating public debt highlighted the complexities of Lebanon's path to recovery in the aftermath of civil conflict. Rafik's death in 2005 triggered a series of political upheavals. Mass protests, known as the Cedar Revolution, led to the withdrawal of Syrian troops from Lebanon. Power vacuum resulted in increased sectarian tensions and frequent governmental paralysis. The political landscape became increasingly fragmented, with major parties often at odds, leading to policy stagnation and delayed reforms. This environment hindered effective governance and eroded public trust in political institutions. Corruption became deeply entrenched in Lebanon's political and economic systems during this period. The sectarian power-sharing arrangement, intended to ensure representation for diverse groups, instead fostered a culture of patronage and clientelism. Public offices were often allocated based on sectarian affiliations rather than merit, leading to inefficiency and nepotism. This system allowed political elites to exploit state resources for personal gain, undermining public services and economic stability. The lack of accountability mechanisms further worsened corruption. Oversight institutions were either underfunded or staffed by individuals loyal to political leaders, rendering them ineffective. As a result, large-scale embezzlement and misappropriation of public funds went unchecked, contributing to the depletion of state resources. During this time, the economic policies were characterized by heavy reliance on the banking sector and substantial foreign borrowing. The government and central bank maintained high interest rates, at times reaching 20% to attract foreign deposits and maintain currency stability, which were then used to finance public spending. This strategy, described by the World Bank as a Ponzi scheme, relied on continuous inflows of new deposits to pay existing obligations. While this approach provided short-term liquidity, it led to the accumulation of significant public debt. The combination of political dysfunction, pervasive corruption, and deteriorating economic conditions fueled widespread public unhappiness. In October 2019, a proposed tax on internet-based calls, including WhatsApp, sparked massive protests across the country. Citizens from various sects united to demand an end to the sectarian political system and the establishment of a more transparent and accountable governance. These protests emphasized the population's frustration with the ruling elite and the systemic issues plaguing the nation. The World Bank reported that the GDP plummeted from approximately $55 billion in 2018 to an estimated $33 billion in 2020, indicating a contraction of about 40%. This level of economic downturn is typically associated with conflicts or wars, emphasizing the severity of Lebanon's financial collapse. The Lebanese pound, long pegged to the US dollar, lost over 90% of its value on the black market. This devaluation led to hyperinflation, with prices for some essential goods increasing by more than 600%. The rapid loss of currency value eroded purchasing power, making everyday necessities not affordable for many citizens, as Lebanese pounds became one of the weakest currencies ever in the world. Now, talking about the current situation, still the economic downturn had a profound impact on the Lebanese population. Unemployment rates soared as businesses closed or downsized due to the financial strain. Concurrently, poverty levels escalated, with a significant portion of the population struggling to meet basic needs. Years of unfettered spending and accumulation of public debt left Lebanon with little to show for its financial obligations. In 2020, the country defaulted on its foreign debt for the first time, exacerbating the economic crisis and undermining confidence in the government's financial management. Banks imposed informal capital controls, restricting withdrawals and foreign transfers, which led to public outrage and protests. The lack of access to savings further diminished public trust in financial institutions and contributed to the overall economic instability. Successive governments failed to implement necessary reforms, and political infighting hindered effective decision-making. The lack of accountability and transparency fueled public dissatisfaction and protests as citizens demanded an end to the entrenched corruption that had contributed to the nation's downfall. The Beirut port explosion in August 2020, which killed at least 200 people, further exposed the extent of governmental negligence and corruption. With all the prolonged crisis of economic disaster, is there any hope in Lebanon? Well, Lebanon's economic recovery is possible, but will require years of disciplined governance and international cooperation. The resilience of its people, the presence of a skilled diaspora, and its strategic geographic location offer hope. However, the road to recovery is steep and fraught with obstacles. Without political stability and sustained reform, the country risks remaining trapped in cycles of poverty and stagnation. Yet, history shows that nations can rise from the ashes of economic downfall. If Lebanon's leaders can overcome their differences and prioritize national over sectarian interests, there is potential for the country to reclaim its status as a vibrant economic hub in the region again. Kindly share what you think of Lebanon in the comments section. Until the next one, watch, like, and subscribe. Peace.